Title: In New York. Chapter 1: Mary's Big Journey. Mary was 8 years old when her life took a big turn. She lived in a small, quiet village nestled among green hills and babbling brooks. Every day, she played with her friends, chasing butterflies and laughing in the sunshine. But one day, her parents sat her down and said, "We're moving to New York City." Mary's eyes widened with excitement and fear. New York City was far away, across the vast ocean. She imagined towering buildings and bustling streets. Mary felt a mix of emotions: excitement to see a new place but sadness to leave her friends behind. The journey to New York was long and tiring. They packed their belongings into suitcases and boarded a big ship. Mary watched as the familiar shores of her village faded into the distance. She felt a pang of homesickness but also a thrill of adventure. On the ship, she saw vast stretches of ocean, sparkling under the sunlight. Seagulls swooped and cried overhead, accompanying them on their journey. Mary held her mother's hand tightly, finding comfort in her warmth amidst the vastness of the sea. After many days of sailing, they finally arrived in New York City. Mary's heart raced as she stepped onto the bustling docks. The air was filled with the sounds of honking cars, chattering people, and the distant hum of city life. Tall buildings reached up towards the sky, casting long shadows on the crowded streets. Mary felt small amidst the towering structures and throngs of people. She clutched her mother's hand, her eyes wide with wonder and a hint of nervousness. Chapter 2: Meeting Hans. In their new home, a small apartment in a bustling neighborhood, Mary felt lost and lonely. She longed for the familiar faces of her old friends. But one day, as she wandered through the nearby park, she saw a boy with blonde hair and bright blue eyes. He was playing with a toy boat in the fountain, his laughter ringing out like music. Mary's eyes lit up with curiosity, and she approached him shyly. "Hi, I'm Mary," she said softly, her voice trembling with nerves. The boy looked up, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "I'm Hans," he replied with a grin. "Want to play?" And just like that, a friendship was born. Mary and Hans spent hours exploring the park together, chasing each other through the trees and laughing until their sides hurt. Hans showed Mary all his favorite spots: the best climbing trees, the secret hideouts, and the perfect spot to watch the sunset. Mary felt a warmth bloom in her chest as she realized she wasn't alone anymore. She had found a friend in this big, bustling city. Chapter 3: New Beginnings. As the days passed, Mary's family settled into their new life in New York City. Mary started school, a bustling place filled with children from all walks of life. The classrooms were filled with colorful posters and the sound of children's laughter. But Mary felt out of place. She didn't understand the language they spoke: English. It sounded like gibberish to her ears. But Hans was there to help. He sat beside her in class, whispering translations in her ear and helping her navigate this strange new world. Mary listened intently, soaking up every word like a sponge. She stumbled over her words at first, but with Hans' patient guidance, she soon began to grasp the basics of English. She learned how to say, hello, and thank you, and before long, she was able to hold simple conversations with her classmates. Chapter 4: Facing Challenges. But not everything was smooth sailing for Mary. As the new kid in school, she faced her fair share of challenges. Some of the other children teased her for her foreign accent and strange clothes. They called her names and laughed behind her back. Mary felt her confidence waver, and tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to run away and hide. But Hans wouldn't let her. He stood by her side, his arm wrapped around her shoulders in a protective gesture. "Ignore them," he said firmly. "They're just jealous because you're different. You're special, Mary." And with Hans' support, Mary found the courage to stand tall and face her bullies head-on. She held her head high and refused to let their hurtful words get to her. And slowly but surely, the teasing stopped. The other children began to see Mary for who she truly was, a brave, kind-hearted girl who deserved to be treated with respect. Chapter 5: Exploring the City. On weekends, Mary and Hans set out to explore the city they now called home. They wandered through Central Park, marveling at the lush greenery and sparkling lakes. They rode the carousel, their laughter mingling with the joyful strains of music. They visited museums and art galleries, their eyes wide with wonder at the treasures they beheld. But it wasn't just the famous landmarks that captured their hearts. They also loved exploring the hidden gems of the city, the cozy coffee shops tucked away on quiet side streets. The vibrant street markets overflowing with exotic fruits and spices, the colorful murals that adorned the walls of forgotten alleyways. With each new discovery, Mary felt her love for New York grow deeper. And through it all, Hans was right by her side, his hand clasped firmly in hers as they journeyed through this magical city together. Chapter 6: Bonding Moments. Mary and Hans shared many adventures together in their beloved city. They climbed trees in the park, their laughter ringing out like bells. They chased fireflies on warm summer nights, their faces glowing with wonder. They had picnics in the sunshine, sharing stories and dreams as they watched the clouds drift lazily across the sky. But it wasn't just the big moments that strengthened their bond. It was the little things, the quiet moments of companionship as they sat side by side on a park bench, watching the world go by. The shared jokes and secret handshakes that only they understood. The way they could communicate without saying a word, their hearts speaking volumes in the silence. Mary felt like she had known Hans her whole life, even though they had only met a few short months ago. He was more than just a friend, he was a kindred spirit, a kindred soul. And as they laughed and played and dreamed together, Mary knew that their bond would last a lifetime. Chapter 7: Overcoming Fears. But life in the big city wasn't always easy for Mary. One day, as she was exploring the bustling streets of New York, she took a wrong turn and found herself lost in the maze-like subway system. Panic surged through her veins as she realized she didn't know how to find her way back home. Her heart raced, and her palms grew clammy as she frantically searched for familiar landmarks. But then she remembered what Hans had taught her: to stay calm in the face of adversity, to trust in herself and her abilities. And so, with a deep breath, she forced herself to focus, to think logically about her next steps. She approached a kind-looking stranger and asked for help, her voice trembling but determined. And to her relief, the stranger guided her safely back to familiar ground. Mary felt a surge of pride as she emerged from the subway station, her heart still pounding but her spirit unbroken. She knew that she could handle whatever challenges life threw her way, as long as she had Hans by her side. Chapter 8: Growing Together. As the months passed, Mary and Hans grew even closer. They shared their hopes and fears, their dreams and aspirations. They supported each other through thick and thin, lending a listening ear and a comforting shoulder whenever it was needed. Mary felt a deep sense of gratitude for Hans and all that he had done for her. He had been more than just a friend, he had been her rock, her anchor in a sea of uncertainty. And as they laughed and cried and grew together, Mary knew that their bond was unbreakable. They were more than just friends, they were family. Chapter 9: Saying Goodbye. But as much as Mary wished she could stay in New York forever, she knew that life had other plans. One day, her parents sat her down and said, "We're moving again, Mary. This time to a new city." Tears welled up in Mary's eyes as she realized what this meant. She would have to leave behind everything she had come to know and love: her school, her friends, and most of all, Hans. Her heart felt heavy with sorrow as she thought about saying goodbye. But Hans wouldn't let her wallow in sadness for long. He wrapped her in a tight hug and said, "Don't worry, Mary. We'll always be friends, no matter where life takes us. And besides, this isn't goodbye, it's just see you later." And with those words ringing in her ears, Mary boarded the train that would take her away from the city she had come to call home. As she watched the familiar skyline fade into the distance, she felt a pang of sadness in her heart. But she also felt a glimmer of hope, knowing that no matter where she went, a piece of her would always remain in New York City. Chapter 10: New Beginnings. In her new city, Mary felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Everything was different: the people, the language, the sights and sounds that surrounded her. But as she walked down the bustling streets, she felt a sense of determination rising within her. She would face this new chapter of her life with courage and grace, just as she had faced all the challenges that had come before. And though she was far from the familiar streets of New York, Mary knew that she would never forget the memories she had made there. She would always carry them with her, the laughter, the friendship, the sense of belonging that she had found in the bustling city streets. And as she settled into her new life, making friends and exploring new places, Mary knew that no matter where life took her, she would always have a friend in Hans. They may be miles apart, separated by distance and time, but their bond would remain unbreakable. And as she looked to the future with hope in her heart, Mary knew that her adventures were far from over.